From CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede here at the state capitol in Tallahassee, where we have been tracking this year's legislative session. Now, later in the show, we will have a full report on the Florida Senate unanimously passing the Tristan Murphy Act. What supporters argue is the most significant reform to deal with the mental health issues in the criminal justice system since the passing of the Baker Act more than 50 years ago. But first, I had an opportunity to sit down with the president of the Florida Senate, Ben Albritton. As Florida House Speaker Danny Perez and Governor Ron DeSantis continue to battle each other on a host of issues, it is the soft-spoken Albritton who has emerged as a powerful swing vote in deciding how best to decide everything from tax policy to condo reform. Mr. President, thank you very much for your time. I want to start with the Senate's tax plan, which you just put out less than 24 hours ago. It seems as if you are trying to find some measured ground between what the governor wanted to do, which was $1,000 to every person with a homestead, a rebate check, and the House Speaker's plan, which was to drop the sales tax permanently from 6% to 5.25. Explain to me why you think your plan is the best option.
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for inviting me on the show. It's always good to see you. So let's start with some foundational pieces of this, and that is that I think reducing sales tax and I think reducing property tax both have substantial merit. They're both important, and they're both costs that are driving the affordability challenge we have in Florida. So what we have done is, in an effort to try to essentially do this, is we're taking a sales tax approach to reduce sales tax, but we're doing it in a targeted way. Prime example, one night, 10 days ago or so, I took the tax handbook home. If you want some exhilarating reading, that is that. Took the tax handbook home and just started looking through all the tax structure in Florida, trying to figure out where are the pieces that we can target on that can make the most amount of impact for, as an example, seniors or young families, right? The governor's property tax piece is great for homeowners, but what about young families, that are renting? How do we target so that everyone gets some relief? And that's the origin of the idea of clothing.
So yours would, and it's not a permanent reduction, it's a one-year exemption, correct?
Well, at this point, we'll see how it all develops. There certainly is the possibility it could be recurring.
So for any, sure. It's for any clothing item, shoes, clothing of $75 or less.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, how did you come up with the $75 figure as being that's the point in which you any items below $75 you wouldn't pay a sales tax on?
So we were looking at call them necessities, right? That really is it. So at $75, Jim, you're looking at pajamas, T-shirts, underwear, the things that it's not a $300 jacket or something like that, right? It's the things that everybody has to utilize.
You also talk in this proposal about studying the idea of eliminating or reducing property taxes, and it seems as if you've committed to having something on the ballot for 2026. Have you pre-decided that there is going to be a ballot item at some point in the near future to either remove or substantially eliminate property taxes?
Well, the hope is yes. But here's what I do know. To start the conversation, you got to start the conversation. You got to put it in motion. And that's what we're doing.
Is it safe to say that the governor's idea of expanding the budget by having a $1,000 rebate for anyone with a homestead exemption, that idea is not something the Senate is likely to move forward on?
Well, I've had some conversation with the governor about this, and he's really in the same place I am, open-minded about how to do it. All right, that's one idea that he had. Right, there's lots of different ways to do this.
I'll be honest with you, the knock when I talk to people that I was going to interview you is you're hard to pin down. You can be a little soft in terms of, like, You won't say the governor's plan, the idea of a $1,000 rebate check is dead, but I think in your mind you know it's dead. You're not going to move forward with it. And the House Speaker's plan to permanently reduce the sales tax, from 6 to 5.25, you're never going to go along with that, but you won't come out and just say, that's dead. We're not going to do that. Why is that?
Hard to pin down. So when I gave my speech on opening day, I know that your listeners, and anytime anything is in print or on video, folks can take that away as certainty. And at this point in time, I'm not certain. So the property tax is a prime example. We're going to study this. We're going to look at it this summer. We're going to dig into it. And we're going to try to figure out what's the best mechanism to provide relief where it needs to happen.
But so this year, nothing, the $1,000 is not going to happen this year.
I would expect.
You see? That's
I would expect, no, I've got you, right? During session, almost anything can happen. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll give you that one. Is it going to be hard to do a $5 billion tax reduction recurring with sales tax? That's going to be hard because that's going to impact the budget pretty substantially. And let's go back. I want to make sure and say this. Florida is not Washington, right? They are doging Washington, and I'm thankful they are because the spending up there has been out of control. We've done a very good job in Florida. Our budget, when you look at it per capita, the governor's recommendations, the House budget, and the Senate budget are all per capita less than we spent last year. We're a growing state. So when we make these decisions, there is a minimum threshold of what the state budget needs to be to make sure that the garbage is being picked up, that the power is being delivered, all the things that state government is required to do. Right? I don't know where that sweet spot is. That's why I may sound like or be hard to pin down, because I know this: when I say something, stuff goes into motion, and I want to be really careful with that, Jim.
It's also like the House Speaker's budget would bring in far less revenue if you're going to lose $5 billion in sales tax. The governor's proposal adds almost $5 billion in spending. And it seems like one of your concerns is where the state is going to be, not just this fiscal year, but in the next 2, 3, 4 cycles, because the state estimators, the economic estimators, have suggested that there could be a $7 billion deficit in the budget within about 2 years. How concerned are you about the economic security of Florida at this point?
So first of all, I do want to say this, that I could not have a better friend than in Danny Perez. He is a solid human being. I'm concerned about it because, number one, the money we spend here is not ours. It's taxpayer money. Number two, there are critical services that the state government needs to provide to make sure, and look, I'm a conservative guy. I'm a small, efficient government guy. But there are minimum thresholds to make sure that we aren't on purpose being disruptive to the quality of life in Florida. So, look, I'll leave all of that with this, right? We're going to look at it. The $7 billion, according to the revenue estimators, is real. We are doing everything in our power to make sure that we're making good decisions that will stop that from happening. And that all of that is real, Jim. There's no question about it. Before any of the conversation started about sales tax or property tax, we knew by looking at the projections that we needed to make some adjustments. And we're in the midst of doing that, because at a minimum, having a $7 billion shortfall, that's a substantial problem. So before any of this started, we were moving in that direction anyhow.
How concerned are you about the impact of the Trump administration's policies on tariffs could have a negative impact on Florida?
So I know this. I know that President Trump is a very smart man, and he clearly has been a very good businessman. He understands the principles and practices of business. Let's talk about tariffs in the context of Florida farmers. So that's a very valid point. Today, you can ship, and I'm in the citrus business. I'm a farmer, right? Just for
full disclosure.
Full disclosure.
Right.
I'm a farmer, right? When I look at this, here's what I know. What I know is that you can ship single strength orange juice across the border in Mexico, FOB Texas, or FOB on a container ship out of Brazil, FOB Miami, cheaper than we can produce it here. That's a fact. So when I look at the tariffs, I think, okay, there are certainly some commodities that will be USA commodities that are going to be benefited by those tariffs because we're at a competitive disadvantage just being a grower, right? The overall implications of the tariffs, I do not think for a second the president has any intentions in hurting this economy. So I think they're going to take a measured approach and it will work out okay.
You talked about before, like, you're all in favor of doging Washington. You're a proponent of it. One of the impacts of Doge has been, for instance, a dramatic cut to National Institutes of Health, including medical research grants. I think the University of Florida could be hurt to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. I think Florida State University's president said that they could lose $65 million in research money. Does that sound like a good cut to you?
Well, here's what I know. Let me give you an example. The state budget today, let's just call it a $115 billion budget. Of that, around $38 billion is federal pass-through dollars for programs across the board, not just that. In the Department of Agriculture, that's where the school feeding programs come from, Medicaid, the whole deal. $38 billion. That's 32% of that budget, of the state budget. So at the end of the day, the federal portion of the state budget is substantial. There's every possibility we're going to likely see cuts for federal funding that supports Florida programs and the programs we implement that we would cost share essentially with the federal government. So
Medicaid reimbursements could be impacted, the NIH
across
funding.
the gambit,
right?
Transportation, it's really everywhere, right? So let's go back in that context. Let's go back and think about it on the state budget, right? It's the reason that I'm thinking about this in a cautious way because we don't know for sure. Department of Emergency Management, everywhere, right? And we're likely going to see a throttle back of federal spending, again, necessarily, a throttle back of federal spending. So that's why I'm looking at this very cautiously.
I want to ask you about something that is building a lot of steam on the House side. It's regarding Hope Florida, the private agency or the agency that's sort of spearheaded by Casey DeSantis. The House has been raising a lot of concerns about the fact that they have not filed any of their proper paperwork, no income taxes, nothing's available to sort of see at the public level. There's now controversy surrounding where a $10 million check or settlement may have come into that wasn't reported to the legislature, that some of the House members think was required to be reported. Just on a broader area, are you concerned by some of the things you've been hearing as it relates to Hope Florida?
So let me start with this. The mission of Hope Florida makes sense to me. I do believe it will help people that need direction to be able to build a better path for their life. So the overarching goal of Hope Florida really makes sense to me. And I like the idea a lot. Second of all, should there be new parameters put in, reporting parameters, clarity in the way things should operate? Sure, right? State government, whether it's Hope Florida or DOT or whatever, right? We should be about the budget. We should be about continuous improvement. So when we see things that may either appear to be incorrect or not as transparent as we would like, that provides opportunity for us to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just have a conversation about how do we do it better.
But in the interim, while that is trying to be corrected, should the state move forward with a bill that's currently on track to essentially give it sort of permanence, Hope Florida, within the state of Florida? Should those issues be corrected first and then, for instance, maybe next session come back? with that issue when all these other questions are cleared up, or can you move forward with embedding Hope Florida sort of with a permanency, and then try to clean up what may be a mess in terms of their transparency later?
Well, first of all, I think there's time this year. We still have 3-4 weeks left. Matt?
It goes quick.
It goes quick, but there's a lot of time left on the clock this year to try to figure out how to look at these opportunities to do better and figure out, craft the language and make it right. So I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to figure it out this year.
You can see more of my interview with the Senate President on our website at cbsmiami.com. When we come back, in an emotional and powerful moment, the Florida Senate passed the Tristan Murphy Act, a bill that will dramatically help people with mental illnesses who are caught up in the criminal justice system. Stay with us.